Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Jason Cutter. He's the founder and CEO of the Cutter Consulting Group and the host of the Sales Experience podcast. Jason Cutter on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in there, my friend. I'm doing all right. Yeah. So you're in north of San Francisco?
Yep. I am halfway in between the Napa Sonoma wine country area that people love and the coast. So up near Santa Rosa.
You know, it's just so ugly up there. God, I can't believe you live there.
It's terrible. It's miserable. Don't recommend it. Stay wherever you're at.
I feel like saying that about Colorado too. I'm always like, yeah, it really sucks here. Please stop moving here.
Don't do it.
Now you live in a beautiful area. Really cool. Very nice. Before we get into your current business and the podcast, why don't you give the listeners a little personal overview about Jason, family, where you grew up, stuff like that.
So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so not too far from where I am now. And I only child, two analytical type parents. So my mom, before she retired, she spent all of her working life in banking and finance manager. My dad went after the Navy. He went into a company as an engineer, self-taught, and then moved his way up there. So I have two very analytical parents. I was a shy, awkward, only child that I was also a late bloomer. And it was just kind of me and my parents doing our thing, which I bring up because later we'll talk about what I do now, which is so fascinatingly different. But for me, it was pretty quiet childhood. I was going to be the first one to go to college in my family as, cool. Of the first one. And I wasn't really ready for it. So my parents kind of pushed me towards that more because they wanted something better for me. I went to community college for a few years, and then I ended up going to UC Santa Cruz, where I got my bachelor's degree in marine biology.
Why marine biology? Did that have something to do with your dad being in the Navy?
No.
What was the tie in there?
It was a transition in junior high/high school from my childhood dinosaur phase into a shark phase, honestly. And I had a really cool biology teacher in early high school, like freshman year. It was a general class. And a part of it, we looked at, the marine biology and fish landscape. And then he actually supported me on some field trips that we went, and it opened my eyes to some shark-related stuff. And at the time, that was pre-Shark Week was just beginning, and now it's a staple, but it wasn't always a thing. And I used to record it on VHS so I could watch it throughout the year.
You just gave away your age. VHS.
I did, yeah. I'm 44. I'll say it right now. I was pretty cool as a kid because I had a TV in my room that had all three channels and pliers to change the volume. So anyway, I went to school, UC Santa Cruz. And then while I was there, I got connected with an organization. And so I actually spent 2 years while I was in school and 2 years after working on different shark-related projects, tagging sharks. For my senior thesis was catching sharks in the local slough there to do some studies on them.
Cool.
And so I did a lot of shark stuff. And then when I graduated with this great degree and a lot of experience, I tried to get a job for $8 an hour scrubbing boats for Fish and Game, and I couldn't get it. They gave it to a master's student because I wasn't qualified enough, even though I had a ton of field work. And I was like, I don't want to do more school. So moved to Seattle with my girlfriend at the time. She got into school at UW, and I got a job at Microsoft for a couple years.
How?
I thought I was really special at first. I thought I was amazing, and it was like a stroke of luck. Turns out they were hiring for the holiday tech support season. This was back when tech support was actually done in America. There was actually a time as well that also dates me when it was done by people in the States. And I thought I was really special, but they were hiring any warm bodies to man the phones post-holiday tech support, people calling in with their broken computer games or their, broken computer issues. And so that was interesting, but I realized that as well as I did with solving problems and handling cases and helping people out, I really didn't enjoy it. Like I wasn't a tech person like I thought I wanted to be.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then walk us through the rest of your career here before you started your company. Go ahead. Give us the short version.
So then I went from there. I went into sales. So my first sales job was in the mortgage business. I fell into it like most people, no training, no guidance, no indicator of what to do, what not to do. And that kind of started me on a sales journey from helping people with mortgages to helping people out of foreclosure, helping people with credit card debt, student loans. I took a brief period of time where I kind of left the regular world and worked as a government contractor overseas, deploying with the military for a while.
Now let me stop you right there because I found that interesting about your profile. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, marine biology. All right. Somehow I went to work for Microsoft. Then all of a sudden he becomes a loan officer and deals with that. And then a little real estate. And then all of a sudden he's working as a contractor for the government. And I'm like, what the heck? Okay. I had that. Talk to me about how you transitioned to that. Like I said, screw it. I don't want to be in real estate. I don't want to do loans. I'm going to go do this other thing. How'd that happen?
Well, several life factors made it such that I needed something different. I needed to generate more income as well as also needed a break from the relationship I was in. It was kind of a stressful time, and it was like, okay, well, let's, mix things up. My dad worked for that engineering company, and they do mostly government projects, and they were looking for people literally to deploy to the Middle East. I had worked with them a little bit in South America in 2001, but they were looking for more people to go to the Middle East. And so in 2011, my first deployment with that project was Iraq and Kuwait. And then I did 6 deployments to Afghanistan, 5 months at a time, working on, government project.
Interesting. Let me ask you something there. So what people can't see because they're just listening to us here is your profile is that, you're in quote real estate and loans up until, the '08 crash and right in there and a little after.
Yep.
Was part of you like, okay, it's '09, this sucks. I need to do something else. And then you're having like a conversation with your dad one day and he's like, hey, I know this, I can make an introduction for you. And boom, next thing you know, you're going overseas. Is that
he had been mentioning it for a while. They'd been doing a project for a couple of years. Okay. And it didn't make sense for me to leave and go do that lifestyle, family back at home. Mm-hmm. And then some financial things happened that, some medical bills related to the family such that there was this huge debt and also a need for some kind of stability. I was running sales teams and the company kept changing such that it wasn't predictable and it wasn't getting to what we needed and what I needed. And I wasn't really happy there. And so then that, I finally took him up on that conversation and then, spoke to the company about it.
And you and your girlfriend had just broke up. So you're like, yeah, I might as well, if I'm going to go overseas.
No, at that point, we're moving forward. So that girlfriend turned into my first wife, and then we got divorced, and then I was married a second time, and then I was married during that time when I then started deploying.
Ooh, that's tough. Okay. Ooh,
yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought maybe, okay. Wow. So you were married when you were being deployed. Yeah. That's always tough on the relationship. So, usually. Anyway,
yeah. The benefit though, is that, I was gone for 5 months. And then when I was home for 2, I was basically off for 2 months. There was no working. There's no other thing else. So it's, it's hardcore vacation mode and then it's hardcore gone mode, which when you get used to that rhythm works fairly well.
Okay. All right. Now at that stage in your life, like, did you know, okay, I want to be a career sales coach, or what did you want to do at that time?
Literally no idea. Literally a leaf in the wind, where A, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and B, at that time, I was beating myself up mentally constantly about my windy path and what felt like failures throughout my life to have some kind of direction.
Okay. Perfect summary statement right there, because I actually looked at your career early on and thought this looks windy. I didn't use that
Yes.
word in my head, but okay. All right. So you're having kind of a reflective moment. Plus, I think you said somewhere in here you're going through a divorce. And so, yeah, you're having some full blown, like, holy shit, what am I going to do with my life moments? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, and being in the desert, there's only so much work you can do, and only so many times you can work out and eat. So it leaves a lot of time for like thinking about stuff and being away from everything, and time to reflect if you want to. You can also just sit around and watch movies all day and count the days. But yeah, I mean, it was a struggle. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm literally 38 years old, sitting in the desert with a marine biology degree and some sales experience, literally having no idea what I want to do with my life. And then funny enough, I'm like, okay, I got to figure something out. I'm listening to podcasts. I found podcasts in 2012. I know that
Okay.
sounds silly, but that's when I found podcasts. I'm listening to them like crazy. And, I actually take a free Coursera online course about operations management because I was
Okay.
curious. I didn't know that was a thing. And then literally halfway through the course, which I aced, I'm like, I love it. I didn't know there was a term for this. This is something I like to do combined with sales, is operations and management. I'm like, oh my God, which then led to literally 2 months later, me working on taking the GMAT test for MBA program and then getting accepted into and starting an MBA program.
Wow. Okay. It's
All while
amazing.
deployed.
Now, tying this to podcasts real quick, had you not started listening to podcasts, none of that may have happened. Have you ever thought about that?
I haven't put those together, but it's definitely true because exposure to various things, especially limited, right? I mean, you're on your own little island in life in general. So it's about who you're hanging out with. And then when you're deployed, when I was deployed, the people I was hanging out with aren't necessarily entrepreneur, aren't thinking about that. Some are, and some aren't, right? And so it's like, who are you around and what's influencing you? And you can read some books, but where do you even start? And, and I'm the kind of guy that listens to podcasts at 1.5 to 2 times speed to just tear through them. So for me, it was great. I mean, podcasts, anything I want to learn about, I'll literally just download podcasts and listen to them.
Yeah, it's a great learning tool. Then at some point you stopped doing this overseas thing and you went to work for Ameritech Financial.
Yeah. So what happened was I decided, hey, I know what I want to be when I grow up. A sales consultant, business coach. It's in alignment with what I was doing a few years before then for, some companies, some offices. And so I started working on the MBA because I wanted to get the knowledge. And then I also wanted to tie in my experiences and make it a little more valid versus this guy with the marine biology. Was working on that. And then somebody I knew who I had helped with previous business basically made me an offer that got me to stop deploying and essentially work there in the capacity as essentially what I do now as a business consultant and as a sales consultant, but internally just working on projects, helping in various ways, starting offices, doing whatever I could and whatever was needed. That was what I did. And then I finished the MBA, and then that company ended at the end of 2018. And I said, okay, now's my chance. This seems like the door that's opening for me to, start the consulting and give that everything I've got.
So that company folded? I don't know the history there.
Yes.
Oh, They did. Okay. All right. Did you walk out with any kind of severance, or it was just like,
no.
Payday's over and I'm going to start my own firm and I don't have any clients yet?
It was pretty much like that too. I was, it was when you start a consulting business or when you start as a consultant, they always tell you, make sure that you have a full list of people who are going to hire you right away so you can hit the ground running. And then also make sure you have 6 to 12 months of money available so that you can float yourself. I hadn't planned on not working. And so I hadn't built up to that. I hadn't planted the seeds. So I did not have the money saved up and I did not have the Rolodex built out. Plus was dealing with a divorce at that point. So the divorce actually was happening at the end of 18. And so a lot going on. And so I thought, hey, now's the perfect time to start my own business and be a consultant.
Oh man. Okay. How old are you in 2018 then? Well, how old were you then?
43 at the end of that. Yeah.
So I'm 43. I know I have sales skills, sales
Yeah.
coaching, sales leadership skills. I know I got that. I got some great experience, but I just lost my job. I'm going through a divorce. I don't have any clients built up. I don't have any big savings built up. And oh, by the way, the divorce probably costs money because they always do.
Yep. Yep. That's pretty much
Woo!
it.
All right. Now, who are you leaning on right in here for mentoring and emotional support? Is that your mom? Is that your dad? Is that somebody like, who are you calling being like,
Um,
hey man, I need a
parent.
pep talk.
Parents were supportive. You know, they always want the best for me. They are very supportive of my windy path and the messy decisions. It's always been a challenge for them to fully grasp it. Luckily, they don't give me advice unless I ask, which is nice. So they're not trying to control my life and tell me. But for them, they're lifelong W-2 paycheck, stable job, career type people, right? Coming from that demographic and that, baby boomer age, like having a job. And my dad retired from that company after 39 years, right? Like my mom's second career she finished at 20 years. And then there's me. Literally, I can remember when I got into real estate and helping people in foreclosure. I was so excited after a few months. I told my parents, I was like, hey, I got this new deal I'm working on. They're like, great. When are you going to get paid? If it goes well, it'll be in 3 months. And I can just hear my parents freaking out, right? Because they don't understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're not getting paid every 2 weeks? And, what kind of benefits? Like, I don't have insurance. What do you mean insurance? What do I need that for? And so that's kind of like my mindset versus they're very supportive and loving, always there if I need them. But the business side was just kind of mostly on my own island, and then just networking with people. I had neglected LinkedIn, and I just started networking with people on there, finding people doing what I wanted to do or in the local area, people in the San Francisco Bay Area because I'm so close, and networking groups to go visit and join, and developing some relationships with people at trade shows, conferences, and like that.
Mm. You were one of those guys that didn't think LinkedIn was a big deal until you needed it, right?
I joined LinkedIn, I'm gonna guess in 2002, 2003, 2004. I was excited when I hit 500 contacts. I thought that was amazing. And then when I started consulting, because when I'm an employee, when I'm a VP of sales, you don't use LinkedIn. You don't care. I don't need articles. I don't need data. I don't need contacts. I just need sales. Like, and you can't help me. So I literally would check LinkedIn once a year. And that was it. So I started my consulting, I think, with 600 contacts in the end of 18, right? So I had like 500 contacts in 2004, and then I started in 2008, consulting with 600. So, and, there's some good and some, not so good with LinkedIn, depending on who you're, wanting to connect with.
Well, if you're in your own business, if you're in sales and you're in your own business, I mean, it's a vital tool, obviously. So yeah, you've done a lot to it since then. So congratulations. Obviously I studied your profile and everything before the podcast. So yeah, it's come a long way since then. So nice.
Yes, it has.
Nice job on it. So tell us then, give us the Cutter Consulting Group elevator pitch. Give us the pitch. Go for it.
So most companies are started and run by somebody who has a product or service they believe in, they want to sell, but they're not good at selling it or creating systems and processes. And the challenge is that sales teams need those things to perform effectively. The other trend that I see a lot is that unfortunately people sit in the sales seat, but I would label them more like order takers because they don't have the skills. They're afraid of being that bad manipulator. And so they end up doing nothing and they don't perform well. And then sales teams really struggle and sales reps struggle. So I come in and help companies assess the whole situation holistically. And then we look at everything that we can improve, from scripting to training to coaching to technology to lead generation, in order to help the team optimize their selling effectiveness and scale to whatever level they want.
I see. That first part. So do you target startups and early stage and small to medium sized companies? Is that your target?
I do. Yeah. That's who tends to be most of my clients. It's a lot of times founders who are really good at selling in themselves. They hired some sales reps and they don't understand why everyone else can't sell it as well as them. But they're not building scripts. They're not building systems. They're not listening to phone calls. They're just thinking everyone should be excited because it's their baby, right? Nobody else loves your baby as much as you do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I totally agree. You're right. Most of the startups, they built something, they made something, they had an idea, they're good visionaries, whatever, the CEOs, the original founders. And then, it starts to kind of, I don't know, fall into neutral because there's no real sales force there. And they're not big enough to hire $250,000 a year, big time sales VP. And so
Right.
that's where Jason comes in.
Yeah, and that's where most of my clients have been in the last year. Has been, and I describe it as companies where there's a hole in the org chart, right?
Yep.
That's missing that director of sales or that VP of sales. Either they haven't gotten to that point and they can't justify it, or they've tried and then they've regressed and they've gone up and down. They've hired a bunch of salespeople, it hasn't worked out. They've hired, they fired, they've hired, they fired. And so I can come in as that fractional VP of sales, put the systems in place, help them scale, help them hire, make everything so that someone else can take the keys to that. Usually then what happens is I help them hire that person to come in and do it. And then, take the reins and run with it.
Okay. So you're not a hired gun, so to speak. You're not going to come in and do all the sales, but you'll help them set up the processes and the platform and get the right people and all of those things. Is that accurate?
It depends. Like I've also done the sales. I mean, I've had clients who, they're doing trade show strategies. So I'm literally going with them to trade shows back when that was legal. In the booth, helping the reps learn how to sell from the booth appropriately, and then also doing sales myself, like literally closing deals, grabbing credit cards, like, making things happen on my own, partly
Okay.
just because I think it's fun and partially to show the others, like, here's how it's done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. All right. And you've had the consulting group now, Cutter Consulting Group, for 2 years?
Almost 2 years. It's approaching 2 years.
Almost 2 years. Okay. Well, hey, what's the percentage of startups that fail? And what's the measure on that? I don't know. 50-60% fail in the first year or two, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's the first 2 years, like 50%, 30 to 50% fail. Yeah.
Okay. And you're already almost at your second year. Okay. By the way, it's cutterconsultinggroup.com. Okay. Very good. So far, is it just you?
Yep. It's just me. I have some subcontractors. I have various people I pull in. I'm really good at being the quarterback and the visionary of seeing what we need to do for the sales team. There's some stuff that I'm really good at, like the coaching, the training, the scripts. And then I have people I bring in for the technical side, the technical development, the lead generation, any of those kind of partnerships needed.
Do you want to blow this thing out to where you have employees in a big firm, or what's your goal there?
It's interesting. I go back and forth and I'm kind of letting things go the way it will without kind of controlling it. Okay. Part of me really enjoys being that business of one and, that kind of army of one. But then also at some point, if I have more clients that are coming on board than I can service, then how do I deal with that? And I'd like to impact more people than what I can just do in a given week. And then also create some freedom where I'm not having to do all of it. So I could see myself scaling to what level? I don't know. I don't know if that means, 2 or 3 other consultants under me. I don't know if that's a team. I don't know if I go really big. I'm kind of in those, I don't have a need to go a certain way. I'm open to it completely. And I'm enjoying the process and the ride so far, less than 2 years in, and how far I've come, and then be like, okay, what's the next phase going to look like?
Are you making money?
Yep.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't, an honest disclosure, I didn't for the first 6 months. It took me 6 months, zero revenue, no clients, building relationships, building networks, figuring out what I wanted, who I was serving, to get my first clients. And then from there, it's been busy. Recently it's been a little slow, and then now it's picking up again as companies are starting to thaw out. But yeah, I mean, that first 6 months was all faith. It was all, I started my podcast with no clients. I was writing a book with no clients. Like I was just doing everything I know felt right. And then just trusted that if I put it in, put the effort in, it was going to happen.
I want to get into the podcast and the book, but let me ask you a couple of questions here. So what happens when you service a client and they're like, hey, listen, man, just come be our VP of sales, W-2?
Well, so far that's happened multiple times. It's always flattering, and I'm not against it. So I've said no each time so far, and not for specific reasons other than I just wasn't ready, but I'm also not against it. If an opportunity came by and the timing was right and my mindset was right and it was something, it felt right, I would be totally on board. Some people you've talked to in the past on your show, and then some people like I know, they're just, they'll say they're unemployable. Right? They literally could not work for somebody else. I can. I'm a good, that's why I work well as a consultant, because you match me up with a visionary entrepreneur leader who has some problems, and I will fix those problems and then move on. Right? That's my strength. And so, but when it's come up, it's a matter of looking at it and then, saying no to that opportunity and then helping them find the right person and then transferring everything to that person. And then, moving on.
Okay. I get hit with, I don't know how many sales emails I get a day, I don't know, 15, 20 through various forms, whether it's regular email or LinkedIn messaging or something, everybody can increase our sales. Everybody can get us more leads. Everybody can, it's just the same crap all day long, with little cheesy emails and messaging. I guess my question is, well, two parts here. What makes Jason different from the massive sea of people like you? Give me that real quick. And then can you just speak to cheesy messaging on LinkedIn that people do trying to sell? It's just so terrible. I sometimes I just want to post it. I just want to copy and paste. I just want to be like, look at this shitty message that this person sent. I mean, this is just terrible. Like, I can't believe this person's in sales. So anyway, two parts there. What makes you different, and what advice would you give to people on their messaging, specifically emails? Go ahead.
But by the way, before I answer those, I've noticed that you haven't been responding to my emails and my LinkedIn messages trying to help you with your business.
That's right.
I don't know why that is, but we can talk about that later. No, seriously. What makes me different is what I have realized, like as far as like in the sales seat or with companies and helping their sales team, is that the time I spent in the desert, right? The literal desert, but also my mental desert years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I realized what made me effective and special was actually my windy path. It was actually my awkward only childness, growing up in a household where my mom literally hated salespeople. Now, some people get into sales and consulting, and it's because, dad was a salesperson or mom owned a business, and it's just like in their family, in their blood. Two analytical parents hated salespeople.
Interesting.
That's how I grew up, right? Like I repelled people. Like I literally, up to a couple years ago, I say, I don't really like people. And everyone would be like, you're ridiculous. Like, you obviously like people. I'm like, no, people are messy. I don't like them. That's my starting mindset. And the reason I mention that is because I think that's actually very valuable, because when I approach conversations, because I want to help people, I care about them, but I'm not trying to sell them. I'm not trying to manipulate them. I don't come from that long lineage. Of people who are like, oh, this is just what you do. You talk people into it and then you move on to somebody else. But I don't. And so for the longest time, I didn't have a label for it, but what I call it now, and the term I use, is authentic persuasion, which is what the book's going to be about. But that's what I help people do, is I realize the power in myself and my effectiveness in sales, in leadership, in convincing companies what they should do, or teams of people, like all of that is because the more authentically me I am, and my hot mess background, but bringing all that into the conversation and being empathetic and caring, combined with proactively, positively persuading people for the right reasons. When you combine those things, to me, that's ultra powerful. And it's the persuasion piece. The best example I give people is, imagine if you went into the doctor, and this is what salespeople do right now. That's just like not the pushy people, we'll get to them in a second, but the order takers, is imagine you go into the doctor, your leg is broken, and the doctor says, your leg is broken, we need to get it fixed. Here's my card. Call me next week if you're interested. I'll send you a follow-up email. Let me know if you want to set a time to talk. Right? Like, no, you have a broken leg. I'm going to fix it. Any questions? This is going to hurt. And then they do it, right? Like they assume that they're the professional, you have a problem. And so a lot of salespeople are order takers because they're not assuming they're the professional. They don't see themselves as the professional. And so what I do is focus more on empowering them to view themselves as the one who can solve their prospects' problems and help them in serious ways. No matter what it is, you could be selling marketing software, it doesn't matter, but like it's impactful. And so you sell from that place and you can do amazing things and have amazing conversations that don't feel slimy or pushy or manipulative. So that's the first part. That's what makes me really different in the people I work with, like that get it. That's the approach that they work, and you can scale that. That's really easy. You don't have to be a smooth talking, like, natural born, which isn't a thing, salesperson. You can be anybody who just intends well and wants to be good at sales. And then that's all I need, right? Like help that's scalable. Cause you can't put 100 superstar rock star salespeople in a room together. You can't scale a company to that. It doesn't work. It's usually a lot of drama. It's expensive. I mean, you got to have you want to have some good people, but it's tough to have 100 or 1,000 of those. So that's the first thing. The second thing is with that frame of mind and mindset, I'm much more on the inbound lead generation side than the outbound.
Okay.
So I'm not a cold LinkedIn spammer, an email spammer. I send some emails, but it's really just, I know that doesn't matter and it doesn't work other than some awareness, providing content, providing value. For the same reason, your doctor doesn't walk around on the street looking at people and going, hey, I noticed that you have a little limp. Let me tell you how you can fix it. And, let's set up an appointment, right? They don't. They take inbound leads. Now, obviously, there's some, like, let's say chiropractors, when they're starting out, they're doing a lot of outreach, a lot of outbound. They're doing a lot of, other things to try to get interest. But sustainable is the inbound. And so for me, that's what I work with my companies. That's how I was raised in all of the organizations I was in, was how do you generate people who actually might need your help, are aware that they might have a problem, and then you can take it from there and really diagnose it and then see if you can solve it.
I like that. Okay, very good. Excellent. Good stuff. Yeah. All right. How about these cheesy LinkedIn cold messages? Just what's your advice? Don't do them?
Don't do it. So here's where I'm really torn is I have literally like my bookkeeper and my tax person as a result of a cold LinkedIn message, right? She sent me the message. I was looking for a bookkeeper. The timing was right. I'm like, hey, why not? Let me get on. I'm in yes mode. So I'm interested in various things that come up. And so that actually worked. I have a couple other service providers that actually worked, and like relationships have been formed. But most of the other ones, what doesn't work is when they assume I have the problem they're trying to solve. When I get the message that says, well, you're in business, which means you need 10 to 15 more appointments a week in order to grow your business. My thought in my head is, I do? You really? You think I do? Like, you have the audacity to tell me that? Like, no. Those are the ones that just miss the mark, instead of like the, hey, I would like to help, provide value. Is there anything I can do? Something, again, this is the thing. You wouldn't do that in real life. You wouldn't be at a party and walk up to somebody and start pitching your thing instantly without getting to know somebody. So stop doing it on LinkedIn.
Bingo. Right there is usually my answer is the chances of you getting my attention to buy something from you without a relationship of some kind are almost zero. I mean, they're almost zero. I don't want to say 100% zero, but yeah, I mean, that's just so slim that you're going to get my attention on that. Even if I happen to be in yes mode, I'd still call somebody I knew that I had a relationship with, probably, if I had a need.
And it's not worth it. And there's other ways to do it. And there's other ways to start the conversation. And if it goes that way, great. But when you're looking for, you're in taking mode and you're constantly looking for how do you get what you want instead of like, how do you help other people? that's a tough one to win at scale. I know they say do it, like cold call and cold outreach and cold emails. There's companies that live by that, but that doesn't feel right for me. And so that's not what I focus on.
Yeah, I don't encourage it either. I think that was a good comparison there. You wouldn't go to a conference of some kind or a meeting of some kind, right? A gathering of people, and just walk up to somebody and pitch them in the first 15 seconds. Like, you just wouldn't do that, right? And I think of it the same way. LinkedIn is very similar, in my opinion. Now, I know people are going to listen to this episode, and they're going to disagree and give us all the reasons why it works.
And I think some of that really comes down to mindset, right? Like, I don't think it works, so I don't do it, so it doesn't work. Some people think, hey, this works and it's great and it's scalable and I can do 1,000 of those a day with some automation and I get some clients. Great. If that works for you, that's great.
By the way, for those listening, the automation part is the biggest turnoff. As soon as if I can tell that it's that automated deal where it kicks me a response as soon as I accept the connection, those will never get my attention.
Yeah, never.
Okay, very good. So let's walk now into the book. Let's talk about the book, and then we'll do the podcast at the end, if that's okay. Tell us about the book.
So the title of the book is Selling with Authentic Persuasion. And then the subtitle is Transform from Order Taker to Quota Breaker. So it's essentially what I was just talking about in that whole process, what I believe, but it's walking somebody through the steps of the authentic side, the persuasion piece, and then a third section, which I call the intangibles, which is really those, like, if you're a fan of sports, you know what intangibles are, right? In basketball, an intangible is it's the hustle play. It doesn't make a stat, but the fact that they dove for that ball and got the ball and then threw it to somebody else, like, that's what makes winners win, are those little plays that have no way to track them. In sales, there are those things where I call them the intangibles that sales reps generally do wrong, order takers generally do wrong, but it's the difference maker in amazing results. And so, but you have to follow all of those. You can't just jump right into intangibles. You have to have the authentic piece. You have to know who you are, what you're afraid of, what's holding you back, why you're doing it. Why do you even want to be successful in sales? Because you're going to need that when you get punched in the face 100 times tomorrow by 100 people who say no. Right. And
exactly.
So you've got to have that. And then the persuasion piece is, how do you walk someone through a process like a professional in order to persuade them in the right way for both you and them to move the right people towards buying.
Very good. How do you get a copy of the book besides going to consulting or cutterconsultinggroup.com? Is that the best thing to do to get a copy, or what do you recommend?
Yep. So the book is coming out soon. So go there and you can sign up for it soon.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. What's the launch date?
In August.
Okay. Very good. So you can sign up to, you can do.
Yep. So I'm adding it to the site so you can sign up for a pre-list for when the book launches, even get a sample of the book so that you can kind of read what it's about, and then we'll keep everyone updated.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you, any advice for writing a book? I know it's an ebook. Do you want to give any,
and a physical book? It'll be a printed book. That's where it's at right now. It's in the process of getting printed and further edited. Two things. One I would say is, get help, get a coach. If you're going to self-publish, get a coach.
Like a ghostwriter, they call it.
No, not even that's another option. There's ghostwriter if you're really bad at writing and you know that, which is fine. Like anyone who is familiar with Gary Vee, he talks about all the time, he's not good at writing. He would rather like record into his phone for 9 hours than have somebody just take that and make a bestseller. So that's ghostwriting, and there's many ghostwriters out there that do amazing work. That's one option. I mean more of a coach, someone who's got a framework for how to write a book. They're going to hold you accountable. Here's the process. Here's the formula. Here's what to write in, especially a fiction book where it's a business self-help or nonfiction book where it's like it's business related, it's focused on some kind of message, right? It's not just a story. Then there's a way to help you get through that process, especially if you've never written one before. And then the other thing I would say is make sure it's a topic you love writing about and you have a lot of information about and you're willing to push through all the barriers and all of the doubt and all of the issues and all of the other costs that come up and all of the challenges and, just everything that goes with anything, right? Like building a house, like it's always going to take twice as long and cost 3 times as much. Writing a book can feel like that.
The Riderflex podcast has been going on now for a couple of years, and we had somebody that said, "Hey, we should put all your podcast tips in a book." And I said, "Okay, yeah, great, let's do it." And then I looked into how to get that going, and I thought, okay, I'm not interested in spending $10,000 to get a book launched. I don't know, what's the average cost of getting a book like this launched? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
I mean, if you're going to do self-published mode, then it's in that range for sure.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
easily that much. And it also just depends on what the purpose is, right? Are you think you're going to be a best-selling author, or is this to help with credibility, or is to help get clients, or to hand out at keynote speeches that you're doing, or some value add for your clients, or
good tip
for training. So what is it going to be for?
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. All right. Now the podcast. So you're a fellow podcaster, man. We could do another 2 hours on podcasting stories, couldn't we?
Yep, for sure. Oh man.
Tell us about the podcast.
It's called the Sales Experience Podcast. I started it last April. And it's 5 days a week, 10 to 15 minutes. I've actually been doing some shorter episodes under 10 minutes recently. It's all sales related. Obviously, it's focused on salespeople, managers, leaders, business owners, anyone who's dealing with or in the sales kind of role. And it's really designed, kind of like the book, to help people do sales the right way, quote unquote, such that, we shift the way that customers and prospects in the world view salespeople. Right now, sales is a dirty word. And if you don't believe that, look at most companies' titles that they give salespeople that hide the fact that they're salespeople, right? Account executive, business development rep, right? Like, technical account manager. Like, no, you're a salesperson, but you're afraid of saying salesperson because people don't like it. And that's what me and a whole bunch of other people right now in this current mode are wanting to shift and change.
Okay. So it's 5 days a week. It's
Yep.
15 minutes. Sometimes it's you talking. Sometimes you have guests.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I'm 240 episodes plus in, and it's either me talking about sales stuff, it's guests, and even consultants like me, trainers, business owners, salespeople, just anything and everything that might help, or somebody might gravitate towards that message that could help them in their career.
Awesome. Who do you use? Who's your host?
I actually use Castos. Which most people haven't heard about, but when I first started, I really loved their WordPress plugin. So I do all of it scheduled in WordPress in advance. And then literally it just is scheduled, it goes live, and then pushes everywhere I want it to go. And I don't know, I like that ease where it's just like I scheduled in advance, one and done.
Very good. No video? You don't want to go video?
So I record all of them video, all the guest ones, and I have them, but I'm just literally not doing anything with them. At times I have a spasm where I want to put them all up on YouTube, and I just haven't been. And I don't know, my video is not my strength or my comfort zone. And so kind of I default to not doing much with them. I have a ton in the can ready to go.
Okay, very good. What advice would you give to the listener that is out there right now and I want to start my own podcast? What would you tell that person?
From the analytical side, what I recommend is set a goal for the number of episodes you're going to do, which is what I know Tim Ferriss recommends as well. So you got to figure out the frequency. How often are you going to do it? Are you going to do a weekly show like most people? Or are you crazy like me with 5 days a week? If you're going to do weekly, how many episodes are you going to commit to? Like, no BS, commit to, here's what you're going to do, and don't give up too soon. What is that number? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20? And set that number, set that intention. And then what I would recommend is making sure you have enough content and it's something you want to talk about for at least that length of time or more. What you don't want to do is commit to 10 episodes, you get 3 in, and then you're like, I got nothing to talk about. Now I'm out of luck. For me, I set my goal at 100 episodes. And before I hit record the first time, I mapped out, it was solo, just myself. I mapped out the topic for all 100 episodes in advance. I knew exactly what I was going to talk about for all 100 episodes. And then I adjusted as I recorded, and I moved things around, and I pivoted many times in the show. But when I started, I had this spreadsheet with 100 episode subjects ready to go, topics, boom, done. I could hit record. I could have recorded all 100 in advance and been, basically 3 months ahead.
I think that's really good advice. The only thing I would add to that is when you set that goal of 100, you should also prepare your mind to say, okay, I'm going to launch 100 no matter what. If I don't get
No matter what.
If I don't get a single listen, if I don't get a single like, doesn't matter. I'm going to do 100. Don't, because what happens most of the time is, I think people, they are so used to the drug that is Facebook likes, or whatever, and they don't get any listens or likes or comments. And so they start to lose faith in it. I think that happens right away. So I would commit to your 100 and do it no matter what happens. If a single person doesn't listen, do your 100. That's the first thing I'd mention. And go ahead.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was the other thing I was going to talk about was set your goal, have your content, and then literally don't check the stats if you're prone to that. Now, I started a podcast actually when I was in the desert. I started a podcast back then when I was working on a concept called Coaching to Abundance. So I started a podcast. I think I did 7 episodes, but I was watching the numbers and I fell victim to it. And not enough people were downloading. Like when I post something, not enough people like it or react, and then I feel bad about myself. And so I literally quit and I gave up. And I had some voices in my life telling me like, you shouldn't do it. Like you're not good enough. And so that didn't help either. Then when I did this show, it was super clear. I'm like, I want to start a podcast. I have to get this voice out. A lot of people ask me like, how do you monetize it? How much money have you made off? Like, no, that's not the point. Like this is burning inside me. Like literally I had to do it. Like the book, I had to do it. And I looked at the stats in the very beginning, and I share this because on the first day I had 4 downloads, and I was so excited that 4 people listened to it. I was overjoyed because I had no expectation. I literally didn't care. And I'm like, that's so awesome. Right. And then the next day it was like 14, and then it was like 20. I'm like, that's cool. And I would go months without checking my stats because that's not why I'm doing it.
The cool thing there, what really matters is when you put something out and a complete stranger listens to it. And like even one of the bottom line is, if you get a complete stranger on this planet to listen to anything you have to say, 100%. That's an accomplishment.
and I marvel at that too. I look at my stats now, like lifetime stats, and I think, man, that's not that much. I know other people who do that in a week because they're just animals. And I'll say that to somebody else, and then I'll instantly go, wait a minute. That means there's tens and tens of thousands of people who heard a message I put out there who were impacted in some way in, I think it's now 46 or 48 countries, where it's holy crap, that's amazing. How do I do more? I'm like, I should do 7 days a week or twice a day. Like, how do I do more?
The other thing you just mentioned there that we should touch on is, don't start it because you think you're going to make a lot of money on podcasting or you think it's going to make you rich and famous, because there's a 99.5% chance it will never produce $1 for you and you will never be famous. So if you're into it for that, you should just stop right now, because there are very few Gary V's in the world, as you mentioned, right? I mean, out of the millions and millions of people that produce podcasts, very few are going to be Joe Rogan or anybody else. So if you're into it for that, you should stop, because that you're just going to be disappointed. You should be doing it for the passion and because you want to help people. And then if strangers listen, great. If it takes off someday and you make money on it, hey, good for you. But don't live for that. Don't wait for that.
No, and there's a different intention and a different energy that goes behind something you're doing just to make money versus when you're doing it because you're either you need to because it's like who you are, or it will help other people, right. And then your profit is a secondary benefit. And then it's always important. You look at the Joe Rogans of the world and the deal he signed and $100 million, and that's great. He's been at that game for a long time.
Yeah, and if you don't believe that, just look up some of Joe Rogan's early stuff. I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible.
That's what I keep in mind every time I do a podcast or a video. I'm like, okay, someday I'll look back at this and go, man, that was rough, but at least you did it.
By the way, some of Gary Vee's early stuff is also terrible.
Rough, man. Terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, but you really bring up a good point there, and just to emphasize it. And that's how Riderflex was started. I mean, we, as a recruiting firm, we started the Riderflex podcast because every week we would just marvel at the crazy things candidates would do or say, and we'd have a team meeting with the recruiters, and all the recruiters would sit around and go, "Oh my God, I can't believe the candidate did that. Can you believe it?" And so we started it as a give back. I mean, it really was like, damn, all right, don't they know better? Like, we got to help these people,
Yeah.
And of course, we get paid by the companies, right? We don't get paid by the candidates. So we don't have a lot of time one-on-one to coach all these job candidates on all the shit they're doing wrong. So we started the podcast as a way to give back. And so I think that's important. If you're going to do a podcast and you build it around a give of some kind because you want to help people, then you're more likely to be successful and continue doing it. If you're starting a podcast because you think it's going to generate money right away, no, you're just going to be disappointed. So,
yep.
Okay, very good. All right, awesome. And the podcast is launched at a certain time every day, or what can people expect there? Is it like if they want to follow you and they're like, okay, I got to listen to my daily Jason.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Most episodes are coming out between 6 and 7 a.m. Pacific time.
Pacific time. Okay, very good.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm right on that, by the way. I'm always telling my guys here at Riderflex, like, hey, we should launch generally about the same time. If we do have followers that want to listen, they're going to look for it right around the same time, especially if they're commuting. Well,
yeah.
Assuming people commute to work someday again. Yeah. By the way, for the listeners, we're recording this on July 7th, 2020. So the reason we're talking about that is because it's still in the middle of the COVID situation. A lot of people working from home. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm very happy for you, Jason, to see everything you're doing. You're obviously a hustler, my man. You're a hustler, right? I mean, all you got to do is look you up on the website and LinkedIn, and you're getting after it. You're getting up every day and busting ass and doing your marketing and getting your presence out there and getting the book ready and doing podcasts. And that ain't easy, my friends. If you think it is, just try it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Steve.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.